Good evening, class. This is Rachel Watson coming to you with my lesson for week 9. I must say, please forgive me if it's not as polished because I'm having issues with getting the camera to work, so I'm using my smartphone. Also, I'm having issues with the board, so I'm going to be using my laptop to go back and forth and show some problems on the board. So please bear with me, but I do thank you for your patience. So now I'm going to turn my attention to the lesson tonight. Good morning, class. How are you? How's everyone doing today? Good. Today, we're going to learn about rounding numbers to the nearest 10 or 100. Now, what this means is we'll be rounding 2-digit and 3-digit numbers. Now, if you remember place value, which we worked on at length, rounding will be no problem for you. So I do have a couple of problems for us to work on, and I'm going to turn our attention now to the board where I've written on the board 5 numbers that we are going to round. Okay, so the first number we have is 25, next 31, 334, 578, and 3,578. I don't want you to let these numbers intimidate you. So what we're going to do is use a number line to round. Now, as you look at these questions, I just want to go around and ask each of you just your thoughts on, these numbers of rounding, and want to find out if there's any questions because we will address them. Okay, Michael, yes. Oh, good question. So if a number is between 0 and 4, does the number round up or down? Great, okay. Susie, what's your question? What if the number has a 5 or the numbers are between 25 to 30 or 30 to 34? Do I round up or down? Good. Tina, what's your question? And after that, I'll take one more. Okay, what if I have 3-digit or 3-digit numbers? What 2 numbers will I place my number between? And Sean, what 2 10 numbers do I use? Okay, well, those are all great questions, and I will answer all of them. So the first step is what you want to understand. What 2 10s or 2 hundreds are you placing the number between? And when you determine that, I want you to write the numbers. Okay, so there should be in your mind, I want you to write out 3 invisible columns. So for instance, the first number is 25. Okay, so we want to ask ourselves, what 2 10s or 300s are you placing the number between? So now, first of all, are we using 2 10s or 200s? Right, we're using 2 10s. Okay, so we all know how to count by tens. Great. So can someone tell me how to go about coming up with the 2 10s? Susan? Yes, that is correct. So as we count by tens, we have 10, 20, 30. You're right. And then what do you do? Right. You go to the number, the 10 that's closest to it on the low end and on the high end. Right. So with 25, what are the 2 numbers? Tom? Good. 20 on the low end and 30 on the high end. Right. So those are the numbers that we will place the number between. So then what you should do is you should then write it out. So let's go to our board. Okay, that's very well done. So, actually, yes. Okay, so what you're going to do is find the midpoint. In other words, what number is directly in the middle. So we have the numbers 20 on one side and then 30 on the other. So we want to find the midpoint. Right, so we have 20 and 25. So now we want to find the midpoint, which is what? 25. Okay, great. Okay, great. So now that you have 3 numbers there, as I mentioned, 3 columns, visible columns, you've plotted your numbers. All right, and now we can see which number is closest. Now we happen to be rounding the number 25. So what happens is we're going to determine if we're going to round up or round down. Now, when you have a 5, you're going to round up automatically. If it was a number such as 24 where there's a 4, you're going to round down. So being that it's 25, the number that it's going to round to is going to be what? Right, 30. Great job. Okay, the same is going to be for the number 30. Okay, 31 is the next number. So for 31, what are the two tens that it's between? Right, 30 and 40. Now, how do we approach that? That's correct. So now we're going to determine, we've already determined which two tens it's between, it's not hundreds, right? And then we also know that we found the midpoint, which is what? 35, great. And now we plot 31 where it needs to be between the 30 and the 35. So being that 31 consists of 1, are we going to round up or we're going to round down? And also, which number is it closest to? Right, you want to first ask yourself which number is closest to. Okay, and we know that is what? 30. Right, so 31 rounds to 31. Great. Let's look at 334. Now, we're either doing a tens or a hundreds. Who can tell me which one? Right, we're using hundreds. So, who can tell me what 200s we're going to use? Okay, so we're looking at 334. Now, what do we do? Great. We're going to go to the last 2, which is 34. Right. And then we're going to now decide what our 200s are. Correct. 330 and 340. Great. So now what do we do next? We look at 34. Now we plot the midpoint. Okay, what is the midpoint? Great, 335. So where would 334 go? Right before 335. So do we then round up or round down? Good, we're going to round down. Why? Because it's closer to 330. Okay, let's look at another one. 578. Good. The 200s are 580 and 570. Correct. 575 is in the middle. That's the midpoint. Correct. Good. So 578 is after 575. Correct. We round up. Next, 3,578. What are the two midpoints? Correct. 3,570 and then 80. Good. 3,578 goes in the middle right after 3,575. So great. We round up. Okay. So that's basically how you round. So Michael, to answer your question, if a number is between 0 and 4, does the number round up or down? When you have numbers 1 through 4, you'll round down. Susie, what if the number has a 5 or the number is between 25 and 30? When you have 5 at the end of the number, you're going to round up. Tina, to answer your question, okay, when you have a 3-digit number, you're going to assign a place value according to the tens column. For example, the place value for 234 and 230 are 240. So 234 is closest to 230, and the number 4 is under 5, so you're going to round right to 230. And Sean, as far as the two numbers that you use, first you must know how to count the tens, 10, 20, 30, 40. And you're going to use the 10 before and after the number you are trying to round. For example, the number 15 has 10 and 20 as the tens surrounding it. So you round to 20 since those are the two closest. So I just want to close on a thought with the importance of place value and rounding. Remember, when you understand place value, you'll be able to round any number. Rounding makes it possible to estimate and to judge whether an answer is reasonable. Also, just because you may know how to round up or down when you have a 5 does not automatically mean you forget the rule and round up. You still need to understand place value. Okay, so that's our lesson. And we're going to put it into practice with a couple of worksheets that I have prepared, which will be in the lesson. Thank you so much for your interest, and have a good night.